Namaste, Harjigil. This is episode 49 of the Rebel Matters podcast. It's 20 past 1 in the morning, Friday the 21st of June, and it has been a very long day. I left the house this morning at 5:45 to go and do a little bit of training. Got the train up to Dublin after that and spent a few hours in the Shannon and the Dial up in Leinster House on Stride, Kildare, and I was up there because I was having a chat with my old classmate and now Shanador, Neil O'Donnell, and also about the Palestine Community Gym Project, and also got to spend a bit of time having the chats with Jim Gibney when he was showing me around the place. Talked about all manners of revolutionary things and had a wee bit of lunch in the restaurant there and a pint of Guinness in the Dial Bar, which was really nice. And then after that I headed over to Grogan's Castle and had a wee chat with Nicky Kelly and the artist Robert Balla and had a nice pint of Guinness there as well, and then headed up to meet with Radie Peat, who is the guest on today's podcast, and we recorded this episode in the kitchen of Radie's house while she was also making some dinner, and turned out it was a really nice chat, so I think you're going to enjoy it. Radie is in the band Lankum. If you're not familiar with them, then you should go and check them out on Spotify and YouTube, or go and look at their website, which is lankumdublin.com. And it's quite good timing that this episode is coming out today, because it's nearly a year to the day to the first time that I went to see Lankum, which was in the Body and Soul Festival in 2018. And as it happens, I'm going to the Body and Soul Festival later on today, and hopefully I'll be able to get a wee bit of sleep in between recording this little intro and going to the festival, because I am knackered. So I'm not going to drag this intro out very much longer. Let's get stuck into episode 49 of the Rebel Matters podcast with Radie Peat. Cheers.
It's only 5 o'clock.
Actually, I had a drink in the Dial Bar earlier today.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah, pint of Guinness. I was feeling
Name
very fancy.
dropping the Dial there.
I was just in the Dial Bar. Yeah.
Is the Guinness nice there?
Man, the Guinness was so nice. It was
Really?
one of the nicest pints of Guinness I ever had, I swear to God.
I don't know why I expected you to say it wasn't good. But
It was so nice. I think they just keep the best Guinness for themselves. That's what they're doing.
yeah, I wouldn't put it past them. Yeah.
The elite.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I was thinking about a place where we could start the podcast from, and
Yeah.
I just thought maybe that I could ask you about how you got into music in the first place.
Okay, is that the first question?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that probably goes back to quite young, so...
Yeah, it does. My very first contact with music was like, apart from obviously like hearing it and stuff, when I started to deliberately do it was my sisters were going off somewhere every Tuesday when I was 5, and I was going like, where are they going? I want to go too, because they were older than me. And my parents were saying, oh, they're going to Tin Whistle, and I was like, okay, I want to go too. And they were like, are you sure you want to go? And I said, yeah, I want to go. And then I got there and I was kind of disgusted because I didn't know what Tin Whistle meant, and I didn't know I wouldn't be in the class with them. So then I was just sat in a music class and I was like, oh, okay. But then I really liked it, like, from the very first one. So that's like my very first instrument I learned and all. And I was lucky to have a really good teacher, John O'Brien. And my sisters all play and my parents play. It's all trad tunes in my family. So it was a kind of, I would have gotten into it anyway, you know. It's like a really natural thing in my family to do that. But I also was in the primary school I was in, Scoil had a really good music teacher who used to always divide up the whole school, whether you could sing or not, and whether you wanted to sing or not. You got divided up into 4 parts, and then it was 4-part harmony always. And we used to always get together this like kind of Christmas carol thing, all in Irish, actually, all the hymns in Irish, and sing them every Christmas. And I just loved singing in harmony, and I don't know, it was just it's very natural for me. Like, music has always been around, so I can't really imagine it not being around. And I can't even remember the moment when I was like, when it turned into something that I was really motivating, or that I really loved, because it was just kind of always there, and I kind of always really liked it. So
I just got a flashback there to the last time that we were out at the same time. I think we were like singing Christmas songs.
We were, because I wanted to like pick your brain for like, because they're different Christmas songs in Irish, right? And you don't meet that many people who did them all in Irish. Like, so I was trying to pick your brain and your brother's brain. Or like, do you remember this one?
It's like we're living in like a parallel universe. where we're like doing the same thing, just in different places.
Exactly.
And you don't often meet someone else who is in the
exactly. And they're also they are in there. They're just kind of in this weird kind of recesses of your brain bit. You jogged my memory on a few, definitely.
Do you any particular ones that we jogged your memory
on? What was them? That one. But there's actions, and I can't remember what is the first line of it though. It's like, oh, bula bus. That's the end of it. Yeah.
And it was Tara Durchi Lumpar Pum.
Yeah. Classic. And Dunnihe the Mel.
Yeah.
That actually was weirdly my favourite one when I was a child. I loved Dunnihe the Mel, which, like, as a grown up now who like makes music for a living, I think that was the start of me loving really sad sounding minor music, because Dunnihe the Mel has a really sad melody to it. The Horselips recorded it actually as well. I found out only a few years ago, but that actually is kind of funny that I loved it so much as a kid, and it's the kind of melody I would still love now,
Just because you were talking about your family there, and when I was doing a little bit of research for this podcast, I seen that your grandparents had an electronics store.
Yeah. Jesus, good research. Yeah. No one's ever copped to bring that up in an interview.
It's
before.
A long journey down from Cork to Dublin.
Yeah,
so
lots of time. Yeah. Actually, if you say my surname to a lot of people from Dublin of a certain generation, they'll go, "Oh, Peat's World of Electronics," or Peat's of Parnell Street is also what it would have been called. So that was my great granda founded that, and then my granda and his brothers and sister then took it over, and then my uncle. Some of my uncles and my granddad's brothers were still in charge of it and still running it when it shut down a couple of years ago. So yeah, it was like that was the family business.
And do you think is that in my head whenever I seen this when I was doing the research, it's like maybe this is connected with this. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, do you think that the fact that your family were involved in a business that was very much quite well known, it seemed like it was quite well known amongst the people in Dublin.
Yeah.
And if it was going back to your great grandfather, then it must have been one of the first electronic stores, because there couldn't have been that many of them around at that time.
Do you know what? I actually don't know the answer to that. I think it was though, because I think it was the only one. Because I've heard a few stories from people who, like, let's say grew up in Kilkenny or Waterford or whatever, and they all would have gotten the train up or the bus up to get stuff in that shop. So I think it was kind of one of the first ones in Ireland, yeah, like I wouldn't like to say that categorically, but I've never heard of another one. And it does seem to be like, if you talk to anybody, like anyone's granny, let's say in Dublin, will always be like, "Oh, I got my radiograms and Peats," and you know what I mean.
Do you think that has connected you to Dublin more? I was walking around Dublin earlier when I got off the train. I was like listening to Lankum on my earphones, and I was like, "This is the soundtrack of Dublin." Just walking around, it just sounds Dublin. Such a Dublin thing. So do you think that coming from a family that was kind of rooted in the community and it was well known and it was kind of Dublin as such, has had an influence on your musical career?
I don't know if it's had an influence on. Well, okay, sorry, this is going to be a long answer, because like obviously your own sense of identity and who you are and your sense of place will always have an influence, I think, on anything you do. And definitely I feel very much like I'm from Dublin, and it's actually not just because of my dad's family, because my mum's family are very Dublin as well. Like my I'm trying to think, like my granny's dad was a cobbler in Fairview, and they were around for, you know, that mad story where like the lions, the guy who kept the lions, that film they made, Wheel of Fortune, and he had the lions in Fairview, and then they escaped from the garden. That was actually like my granny's back garden.
This is the first time I've heard about this, so maybe
Oh,
you
it's
need to explain it a little
amazing.
bit.
Yeah, so there was a guy in Fairview who got really into having lions, taming lions. So he had them in his back garden and he trained them for years. And then I don't want to ruin the end of the documentary for anyone, but basically the lions did turn on him and he killed him in the end. Yeah.
What?
But so when I was a kid, my granny kept talking to me about the time the lions escaped and they almost mauled your granda, and then they got to a petrol station and they like mauled some young lad who was at the petrol station. Anyway, it just sounded so weird that I actually, like, even though she was totally with it, I kind of just assumed that this was just, she'd just gotten it wrong. So I kind of didn't ask her any more questions. I was like, oh yeah, Granny, the time the lions escaped. And then years later it was like, oh my God, she was completely right. Like, she was telling the absolute truth, because their garden had been like, so the garden that the lions were in, like my uncle, my mum's older brother, could actually see them from their garden. So yeah, so they were around Fairview at that time.
That's
so
mad.
Yeah, so I feel like obviously the Peats connection is kind of very Dublin based as well, but like on both sides of my family, I just feel very connected to Dublin, I suppose, you know, because we've just like there's nothing else. There is Belfast though. My one of my great grannies was from Belfast. Her name was Dolly. Yeah.
And was that on the Peat side?
Peat side, yeah.
So is you know the way surnames, a lot of the time, if your surname is Cooper, that you go back far enough that your family were Coopers?
Yeah.
Is the Peat like name connected with like being in the bog?
A trade. Being in the bog.
Cutting peat?
Are we actually from the bog? I don't know. I've heard some theories on this. One of the theories I heard was that it actually comes from the French word petite, like that we were just small. But I don't know. I know that my family are originally from like the Peat side. Anyway, the Peat name is originally from Pudsey, just outside Leeds in England, and they were actually engineers that came over. Two brothers, engineers, came over, and I can't remember the year, but you're talking a long time ago now, I suppose.
Like 1800s, are you talking?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Do you need to stir the dinner?
I do need, sorry, yeah,
Okay,
I'm
you can
actually
take a
5
break.
minutes. I'm sorry.
Take a little break, just like mix the dinner around. Oh, that does look nice.
It's hopefully going to be very nice.
It's like a tagine.
Yeah, lamb tagine.
I'll keep the people occupied while you're doing that.
Please do. For me.
So I'll just do a little commentary. So we're in the kitchen, Radie's house, and she's like pulling out the tagine, putting it on top of the cooker.
And trying to stir it.
Stir that puppy up. Isn't it mad, actually, what you were saying there about what your granny was saying about the lions?
Yeah.
And like, because there was no social media back then, like things seem to maybe not happen if it's not on social media, and then things that are out of the ordinary back then, you kind of tend to question them sometimes. And actually, like, there were still mad things happening back then as well, but just nobody there to capture them on a phone. Yeah,
but it just sounded so unlikely. And she told me when I was really young as well. I think I was about like 11 or 12 when she was talking to me about it. And the time she told me, no one else was in the room, like, to kind of test the theory. We were just on our own, and I just thought it sounded really kind of exotic, too exotic for Dublin, basically. I was like, sure, who would have lions in their garden in Dublin, like, as if like they would have only been in the circus at the time or something. But yeah, it was fascinating then when the documentary then was made and brought out. I just was totally proved wrong, and unfortunately my poor granny had already passed away at that point, so I couldn't be like, I doubted you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's funny, I
never told her I doubted her anyway. I just said yeah.
I mentioned this person on the podcast quite a few times before, but I used to go down and visit an old man called Mick Murphy, who ran away with the circus when he was like 14.
Wow.
And won the Ras Moor around Ireland, which was it's kind of the Tour de France.
Is this the biking? Oh yeah, Dan was telling me about this, that he trained with rocks.
He made his own like gym out of concrete, and I read about him when I was just after moving to Cork in 2010. I went down to, I was like, I have to find this guy, obviously. So I drove down to Kerry, got my bike, cycled around until I found his house.
Yeah.
And went in.
And he was still there and still in the same house?
He was there, and like the
Wow.
house looked like it was completely abandoned, except for the fact that there was a radio sound coming out of it.
Yeah.
There's so many mad stories there about him, and I just wrapped this, like there was no door, it was like a little corrugated iron thing, and I wrapped it. The radio went off, and I was like, that's it, now he's going to shoot me with a shotgun. And then a couple of minutes later the door opened, and he just was like, oh, come on in, bring your bikes, we'll have a look at it. And then the inside of the house was just like stepping into a different world. There was one room on the left that had the gym that he built when he was 14 or 15.
He was still there?
The gym was still there,
Wow.
made from like metal and pieces of concrete. And there was what he was sleeping on, which was just pallets with some like male sex and stuff there, like those kind of like rough sex.
Oh, yeah, like
cold
twine
sex.
sacks.
Yeah, twine sex, yeah. And then on the other side of the house, the right hand side was just the room that was full of stuff. Like it was full of stuff, and just one seat that he was sitting on, and another piece of a seat. And he just went off telling these stories about how he ran off at the circus and how he won.
What did he do in the circus then?
So this is the
do
thing.
unicycle or something?
He did hand balancing and tightrope walking, and
oh, wow.
he said that he could put like a ladder on his chin, and a woman would walk up the ladder. And in my head, I'm like, this is a great story, but like, this can't be true. Like,
yeah. Show me a photo.
Yeah, and then he whipped out the photographs.
Oh, yeah.
After that, I was like, oh shit. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's mad. So I became really good friends with him over the years. Then after, I just kept going down to visit him and stuff. But whenever I've been telling people this story, they're like, that can't be true. Like,
They're disbelieving. But that's that thing about like sometimes, you know, life is actually stranger than fiction, you know. And I don't know why. It's because when it's an older person as well, you're like, oh, it couldn't be true or whatever. But there you go. They had much more interesting lives than we did.
Maybe then people like in 50 years' time will be then we had more interesting lives than they had.
Maybe if they're still around, if there's still people on the planet. I really hope there is. Yeah.
So do I.
Sorry,
actually,
it's very nihilistic.
But so what
Let's sidetrack that topic conversation.
the
end of the world.
We do another podcast.
Yeah,
on that.
yeah. Let's not talk about that.
What kind of music were you listening to whenever you were young? You're still young. Whenever you were a kid.
How dare you? Whenever I was properly a child, like.
Yeah, like when you started listening to music, what kind of music were you listening to?
So when I started deliberately listening to music, I wasn't like I suppose. Well, no, actually, I probably was about 10 or 11 the first time I started like, you know, choosing a thing to put on and listening to it. And the very first thing I chose to put on was Nina Simone, who I thought was a man for years. I didn't understand that she was a woman, but I just became really fascinated by her, and used to put on this album every single day. I'm sure it drove everyone in the house mad because I used to put it on every single day and sing along with it at the top of my, like as loud as I could, sing along with it. And it was this kind of, I am still very obsessive about music. It's like it's the biggest part of my life, you know what I mean? But it was definitely the signs of me that starting to happen then, because what was happening was I really wanted to sing it exactly as she was singing it. So I'd kind of, if I wasn't getting it right, I'd go back to the start of the track to try get this little wobble she did, or like a little ornament or whatever. And I don't know why I don't know what my goal was. It's not like I was planning on ever doing it in front of anyone, but just for me, I wanted to do it exactly like the recording. So that was my first kind of real musical obsession, I suppose. And then my second one was actually Radiohead. I found one track on this like mixtape that one of my sisters had made. It was Paranoid Android, and I just was like, what is this? What are these sounds? And I was just so confused by it, because like it's kind of like electronic sounds, you know, and just the guitar playing, and yeah, I don't know. I am an absolute avid Radiohead fan still. So many years later, like they're kind of my one of my enduring loves in music.
What was it that brought Nina Simone into your life, like into your sort of sphere?
I think one of my parents actually put it on in the car when we were on our way to Milltown Malbay for the Willie Clancy week, and because in fairness, my parents still basically only listen to trad music. That's really what they're into, and they're really kind of passionate about it. So whenever they listen at home, it would be like the kind of furthest from trad tunes might have been Planksty or something, but like it's all within the trad umbrella. I don't know how they ended up with the CD of Nina Simone, but they did put it on in the car, and I think the first time I heard it, I actually didn't really like it, but then something was fascinating, and I kept going back to it.
That's a really interesting answer to that question that I wasn't expecting. I thought that maybe like the Dubliners or something like that.
Yeah, like Tommy Potts or something. Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, from listening even to Lankum, like it's not. It kind of transcends genres in a way. Like it's not like you wouldn't say that it was trad. I don't know. Would you say that?
I don't know what to say what it is. We joke and we call ourselves genre straddlers because we're kind of. It doesn't quite neatly fit into anything. So yeah, whenever people say what kind of music do you play, I actually don't really know how to answer the question, and I sometimes just get embarrassed and say sort of drony, melancholic folk, I think. But you know,
like from listening to you guys, like I get that sense that it's not like strictly fitting into one genre, and like so that kind of like the fact that you started off listening to Nina Simone and Radiohead kind of like proves that a little bit, I guess, that there was influences there that were way beyond what people might typically think.
Well, like for me personally, like traditional music for me was an activity, and it was a community and a thing that I did, and it was like a thing, like it was like an activity that you did with your friends, your family, or whatever. I actually never sat down and listened to traditional music until maybe I was in my mid-20s. And I never listened to what you would. Well, no, I actually liked Planksty a lot when I was about 17, and I really got into this album, this Andy Irvine and Paul Brady album, which was like a bootleg of a promo concert called The Missing Liberty Tapes. I loved that. I really, really wore that out. But so for me, like I was listening to kind of anything but trad. I had a very kind of weird kind of parallel and separate kind of. My music listening was so different to what I was actually doing musically, you know, and for me it made sense. It still makes sense. It all makes sense in my brain why I like all those different things, you know. But then for the other members of the band, like, I mean, the two brothers in the band had absolutely kind of no dealings with trad until they were maybe in their late teens, and then came to it from like a punk and hardcore and metal background. And then Cormac, the fiddle player in the band, he had a funny one where he like would have been playing trad from as young an age as me, but his family are this like amazing, they are like the most wonderful music weirdos of Dublin. Like they're just brilliant, all of them. His brothers formed, you know, this band, the Jimmy Cake, and one of his brothers played on a David Kitt album, and you know, like he was hearing all this amazing stuff. From a really young age, they were exposing him to some really interesting music, and really out there music, you know. And he really loves electronic music as well. He has like a kind of an amazing array of tastes. So like all of those things do converge then, I think, to like we all really love folk music and trad music, and then we can't really help that those other things, like they do come out, you know. We're also all collectively mad into kind of very drone heavy stuff, and especially kind of 1970s krautrock. That would be kind of a shared love that we do sometimes actually that's the only one that we do sometimes deliberately try kind of get across a little bit. We're like, yeah, what if it was a bit like a krautrock track?
How did you make the transition from loving music and listening to music to becoming a professional musician?
That one's interesting. So I was determined I wouldn't be a musician, basically. So when I was like 18 and people were saying like, oh, you should go to college, and I listened to them and I was like, yeah, I should go to college. And then I was trying to figure out what I'd do, and I was worried that if I did music or art, like visual art, it would kind of ruin those things for me if I like intellectualize them too much.
If you would take it from being a hobby to being something you have to do or something like that?
Yeah, or something that I would start to become very a bit too self-examining about, you know what I mean? Because it was something that really gave me a lot of happiness, and it was an outlet for me. So I just kind of was like, I'd sooner not start taking it apart and looking at it too closely, you know. So I wanted to keep them as something that I just did. So I went and did languages, and then I kind of was listening to what people were telling me, which was that, you know, you should pick a safe degree choice, and you should get a, you know, like if you're an artist, you'll never have any money, and if you're a musician, you'll never have any money, and all this kind of stuff. And I decided to listen to people in my early 20s, and I finished my degree, and I ended up getting this job in in a international health insurance company on a helpline with my languages, which was English and Italian, were the two that I was working in, and it was basically a horrible job. Like I was properly in the I was working for the baddies. Like, and I knew it from my first day of training. I was like, what am I doing with my life? They're training me to turn people down, to ignore their, you know what I mean? I was really uncomfortable with my role in there. And it basically, literally that job made me have a kind of a weird, epiphany, where I decided that the job was a load of shit and that everybody had been lying to me. I was like, they all said that if I did my degree and I got a well-paying job, which it was, and I got a secure job, that I'd be happy. And I just was like, this is the worst thing in the world. I'm so unhappy. I feel like I'm a baddie now. Why have I listened to anyone, basically? So I quit the job and went on the dole without a plan. I was kind of vaguely thinking of going and becoming an interpreter, but I needed an extra language, maybe a Scandinavian one or whatever. So I was kind of thinking about that. And while I was thinking about that, I started going back out to sessions just to make myself feel better, basically, because I really had a hard time in the job. I was having a really hard time and I really wasn't happy. So I went out to do the thing that made me happy without fail every time, which was music. So I went and I went to Cormac's session, who's the fiddle player in Lankum, because we knew each other since we were teenagers from school. And went to one of his sessions. And it wasn't even a decision. It was just it made me so happy to play and to sing. And then I just did it as much as I possibly could. And then I was kind of getting gigs again in pubs. And that was kind of supplementing the fact that I didn't have a job. And then basically the Lynch brothers, they wanted to make another album because they'd made this kind of folk rock one years previously. Folk punk one years previously. And they asked me and Cormac to be on a track or two. And we went into the studio, we went into, not the studio, we did in our houses, decided to practice for the studio. And it just got really exciting really fast because we realised that there was something going on where it was we all really, we were trying to make kind of trad music, but there was more going on than that, and it was just really easy and really exciting straight away. So it just kind of happened by accident, to be honest.
There's a few things there that
Sorry, I talked for ages there.
The first thing is, I think that seems to be a really valuable life lesson. The fact that you had what you thought was a shitty job at the time, that's the thing that kind of spurred you on to where you are now. And I can kind of relate to that as well, having worked in a couple of places where I'm I have no value in this job, and I need to go and do something else. If someone who was, say, in their 20s thinking about becoming a musician, or were being told the things that you were being told when you were in your 20s, what would you tell them? Would you be like, fuck this, don't go and do the job, go and do what you want now? Or would you be saying, yeah, go and do the degree? And
I'd definitely say just go and do the music, do whatever it is that you want. And also what I would say is that there was this kind of fear instilled in me about you won't have enough money if you do this job. And the thing is, you generally, I have to say, you don't have enough money if you're an artist or a musician. But I don't actually think that that's the important thing in life, though. That's the point that I couldn't understand when I was younger, was that I just listened to people who were older than me, and I was like, yeah, financial difficulty would be really hard. But I mean, there's a vast grey area though in the middle, and if you can make enough to live your life and to have reasonably kind of good quality of living, but you're doing what you love, it's a million times better than having a load of money and being desperately unhappy because you don't put value in what you're doing every day. Because that's the thing about jobs, that it might not be that one's an extreme example that I gave because I felt like it was almost evil what I was doing, you know what I mean? Because I was literally turning people down for thousands and thousands of euro for medical treatment based on these little definitions in a little book that I didn't certainly write and I didn't agree with, and I just felt like I was the mouthpiece for pure evil, basically, and I wasn't okay with it. But even a job where let's say one that was suggested to me when I came out of college was, they were like, oh, do you know, because my languages I did, and don't try speak to me in Irish because I will get so confused, but I did Irish and Italian in college. And then ruined my Irish by living in Italy for too long. But someone was saying like, oh, you could go and translate all the documents in Europe into Irish. And that to me is a job I was like, I don't want to do that because that's not a tangible, do you know what I mean? You need something that you're like, this is what I did today. This is what it counts for.
Like that you've created
This is
something.
what it means. Yeah. But that it's that it's necessary. You know what I mean? And that, sorry, I don't mean to disparage anyone who's doing that job. My reasoning was like, yeah, but I know that's a technicality, but I don't know if they all need to be translated into Irish. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure if every single document needs to be translated into Irish, but I do understand that that's like, you know, it's to follow a policy or whatever. Sorry, it's maybe a bad example of a job.
It kind of relates to what you said earlier about doing what makes you happy, and
yeah,
I think that it's connected with how much personal value you attach to what you're doing, and if you attach personal value to it, then it makes you happy. Therefore, you do it.
Exactly. Like, so if you're like mad into linguistics and you like love translation, that'll make you happy. Whereas to me, that's like a job. I never enjoyed translating things. Or like I think any job can be a happy job for someone as long as they feel like they're doing something that they like, but also, you know, like that you finish your work day and you're like, so this is what I did, and I'm glad I did it. You know what I mean? Like, I used to work as a postman and I loved it because it was so simple. It was just like, these things need to be delivered. End of the day, they have been delivered to everybody. Everybody's happy. They got their thing they wanted in the post.
And you get very happy when you get a letter in the post.
Yeah,
if it's not a bill, but I love getting letters.
I like letters in the post, you know, and there's like little packets with a thing inside, like you know. But you know what I mean? Like, that's good job satisfaction. That's what I'm talking about, is job satisfaction. I think that's what I mean, is that like you have to, whatever your job is, like you have to feel like it's worthwhile, and also to get some kind of self-esteem from it as well, to be able to that it's not just a job that like this button needs to be pressed every day, now press the button, that you can be like, I think I did a good job of that today, you know.
When I was walking around Dublin earlier, listening to you guys on the headphones, that lyric that you have, that I look for signs that Dublin's heart is still beating, got me thinking about the role that folk music has in storytelling, and also a few of the other songs, like of preserving people's memories, or allowing people to live on through song that people maybe that everyone else would have forgot about, other than the fact that there was a song about them.
Yeah, because it's like a time capsule almost, you know. That like names that are like, there's songs that are so old, and like there's the person's full name in it, and it's kind of amazing because it's
what's that song with the woman kills the baby and the girl's name is in the song,
like the
Carol, or what is it?
It's the mother kills the baby.
Yes.
So it's a version of the cruel mother, but I don't know which version you're talking. Sorry, there's loads of different ones of that. So,
and the baby's name is in the song, and she put her in the river, and it was, I can't remember. I had it in my head.
Sorry. So also, because like that's what I find really interesting about folk songs. Actually, is that like you told me that plot there, and that plot is the same plot of so many different songs, so many different melodies and so many different lyrics, because there's these kind of like, what would you call them? Like archetypes or plot lines.
I'm thinking about that song. There was an old woman who lived on her own.
That's a version of the Cruel Mother as well.
Same story in the song, but it's a different melody and a different song. Yes,
exactly. Which is like, it's like a kind of weird treasure hunt sometimes then when you're researching them, because you're like, I don't believe it. That's the same, you know, plot as this or whatever. Or The Well Below the Valley is the same plot, right? So they're all the same song, basically. Well, they're the same plot, which means that, like, I think that's really interesting. And I'm by no means like I haven't, you know, studied how this works. Like, I haven't done proper like kind of academic research on this. I just do my own personal research. It's just something that I do as like a hobby, like looking into different versions of songs. But I love watching and kind of imagining how maybe they traveled, you know. So it's like, how the hell did they end up with a version of that song in Newfoundland or in America? That's the other thing, is the Appalachian songs. The Appalachian tradition has loads of the same plot lines as like Scottish ballads, Irish ballads, you know, and then when you start trying to find like, well, which was the starting one? Like, where did it come from? Sometimes it's really hard to find. And also to watch how they change in the different places. So like, you know, the Scottish version, how is it different from the Irish version? Why is it different? You know, like what elements did they kind of like get rid of or keep or ham up or whatever? Because I think it's kind of like, it's like a little study of human nature, because you're watching how these things kind of take wings and, you know, change into another thing. And it's also like, for every folk song that you hear now, like someone singing in a pub, let's say, for every song that you hear that's an old one, what I always think of like is, think of the amount of people who had to hear that song, hear something personal in it, or like have it strike a chord with them or whatever, then learn it themselves and then sing it around for it to survive, just for it to still be around. Like probably hundreds for each song of people who cared about that song and they wanted it and they wanted to learn it and they wanted to sing it for people. So it's real, like, it's kind of fascinating for me. Maybe it's really nerdy, but I think it's really fascinating to see which ones survive. Like, because then you find these old books of ones that, like, there's loads of songs, but like you'd be looking through them being like, okay, that one's still around and sang that one, and then there'd be loads of ones that are just like, they're relics. No one sings them anymore.
A really good friend of ours who's passed away now, Eamon Moore, and before he passed away, he was a beautiful singer, and he went around Ireland, and Eamon was a manic hurling fan, just loves hurling, and went around, collected loads of songs about hurling, and
really?
made an album about it. So every song on the album is
about hurling.
And
So
those are some of
specialist.
the songs that it's a niche market.
Yeah. It's amazing though.
But loads of those songs would be gone now, like, because he was
Yeah.
going and meeting people in bars, the
Yeah.
old people that had these songs from
Yeah.
the 1950s
And
or something
asking
like that.
around, and that's like basically song collecting. Like,
Yeah,
which is, that's the other thing, is that if you don't have people who do that, who like decide that they want to go and get these songs before they're gone. Like, we have like a couple of really amazing song collectors to thank for our kind of body of songs we have in Ireland now, you know. And like, if it wasn't for them, I'd be worried about naming them because I'll miss out some. But one of the ones that like I've gotten a lot of songs off is Tom Munnelly. Collected some amazing songs. Yeah, I think that like that's a really undervalued part of how the tradition works, is the kind of archivists and song collectors as well. Like, they have to exist for the tradition to exist as well.
Like, the stories of history are kind of passed down through songs, and or like we're a kind of people of oral history anyway.
Yeah.
And that, like, the vast majority of the Irish history has been passed down by word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I guess through songs as well. And what role does folk music have in providing like a social commentary for what's happening in the country?
Ooh, I get asked this question all the time, and I always feel like a real imposter answering it, because I'm not like a professor. I'm not even a master's student on this kind of thing. Like, I don't know the facts, and you know, like, I haven't done extensive research on it at all. I think that, like, there does seem to be a strong, from the songs I've heard, there does seem to be a strong vein of like satire, resistance, kind of, you know, political, like, kind of making fun of kind of politicians or, you know, people in power, all that kind of stuff. And in fairness, that is the one way that it's going to, like, how else can something like that survive? So if it was written in a book, it wouldn't be allowed to be written in a book. You know what I mean? It's like it's allowed to survive in this kind of other form because it's music. There's the really famous Frank Hart quote, which is, "Those in power write the history, those who suffer write the songs." So it's like, when you look at, you know, like how history is documented, I don't think that working class normal people really get a look in terms of like dictating the narrative or even adding to, like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems to be kind of removed from those classes, history is. Whereas song is just this weird medium because it's infectious. Everybody likes music, and things are allowed, you know, they survive in a different way, I think, because it is music, and because it's not just, even like, so a song can be almost a political manifesto, but if it's kind of a good song and do you know what I mean? Like, it's allowed into avenues and places that it wouldn't have been allowed into if it was someone just standing there saying like, this is what I think about the world, you know. It's like a stealth attack.
That's like, I'm thinking about Nina Simone's song Mississippi.
Yeah, oh my god,
That went
amazing.
everywhere, and that was a
goddamn.
political statement.
Yeah.
So, why do you think that people ask you that question?
I think they asked me that question because obviously I sing folk songs, so they kind of want to know if I think that's true about folk songs, and also because some of the songs that we write ourselves as a band as Lankum have kind of a political an underlying, I hope not too explicit and in your face, because I actually don't think that's very effective when it's real, like, this is how the world is, you know. But like, there is a lot of, in our writing, we would be trying to communicate how we feel about the world, you know, about our world, about what's going on, you know. So there is a kind of maybe a social conscious to it, but not we don't. That's not what, you know. I'm not trying to shove it down anyone's throats either, you know. Just literally, I think a lot of why people make music is you just make music to communicate your inner world, you know, and just be like, this is how I feel, this is what I think is going on. So that's all we're doing there. But we do think a lot about, I suppose, the state of the world and the country.
What format does that take? Like, do you guys sit down and be like, how do you guys create those pieces of music?
Well, so like, let's say Cold Old Fire was written before I knew the lads, so I wasn't involved in the writing of that song, actually, just in the music part of it. But the likes of the Granite Gaze, we had talked a lot. So basically, the Granite Gaze is we had a number of conversations after the whole Tune Babies thing came out about, like, this is just like, you know, it was just so sad, like, just like kind of deeply, deeply sad, and just kind of we had talked a bit about writing a song about that, and then Ian and Dara kind of started the song and wrote like a lot of the lyrics, and then we all just kind of, that one really did kind of just compare all of our imagery. We decided to use really abstract imagery as well, instead of like anything concrete. We wanted it to be a bit kind of, you can't really put your finger on it, but it just that song was, we had talked before about what we wanted it to be about, and we wanted it to be about the Catholic Church and what it's like to be a young Irish person with the knowledge of all these things, you know, in a very recent past, and, you know, just just what that feels like, you know. So we had talked about that before we wrote that one, but decided to keep it very abstract, you know.
So what's it like bringing that to the table in the Irish music industry, because that's not the status quo?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's lots of people all over the place giving out about us, but like, they don't do it to my face. That's the way people go, isn't it? Like, if they're going to give out about you, they don't tag you on Twitter, you know. They just give out about you. So I'm sure there's all kinds of gigs we haven't gotten, maybe because of it, or maybe there's all kinds of people who think we're, you know, I don't know, too mouthy or something, but it's not being said to me explicitly anyway. But I think that like I have to point out that, like, when we wrote the Granite Gaze as well, that was pre repeal, you know. So like, it was this real frustration where we were like, Jesus, does anybody else feel like this? Like, you're almost like looking for an answer, just being like, is anyone else finding this miserable? Is it this absurd to anybody else? And it was kind of amazing then when repeal happened, because it was like, Jesus, I think that is actually a lot more people's opinion than we had even previously thought.
Like, the other side of what you're saying, of the potential negative side effects of people thinking that you're too mouthy, is that you have a following that, like, I was at the gig in St. Luke's when you did the gig with Jimmy
for
Crowley.
Paddy's Day. That was great fun.
That was mental.
Yeah.
Everybody was going mental.
They were going mental.
And the place was packed out. So it's like, you guys definitely have more, like, lovers than haters.
Well, that'd be nice if that was true. I have to say, our audiences in Ireland are they're just great. I love playing in Ireland, like, because we play abroad a lot, like, because, you know, Ireland's, you know, it's a small enough country, so you can't play loads of times per year or whatever. But I really love our Irish audiences, and to be honest, and the kind of people who come up and say hello to me as well, because people sometimes come up and say like, oh hi, I was at your gig and I enjoyed it or whatever. They're always really sound people. You know what I mean? Like everyone's always nice. There's no wreck the heads coming up and being, saying they were at your gig. So I'd be kind of proud of the kind of people who come to the gigs. They're.
Something that I wanted to ask you about was...
What does the beep beep on the clock mean?
It's 6 o'clock.
No?
Yeah.
That means it's time to take the dinner out.
Does it? You want to do it?
It actually does. Yeah, sorry.
I've got a good question lined up for whenever that's out. It's... I'll ask you the question while you're doing it.
Yeah, no, ask me the question after I've stopped doing it, because I'm kind of bad at multitasking.
Okay.
I will listen properly.
Well, the question has got a background to it because a few months ago, Kneecap were doing a gig in UCD, and the crowd were chanting some slogans that the security at the gig weren't too happy about, and they were carried off the stage, kicked out, and the gig was shut down. And after that happened,
Did hear about that?
I seen online that Lankum also had a gig shut down in UCD. So I wanted to ask you what happened there.
So this was, when was this? There is an article somewhere about it. I wasn't in the band at the time, though, so I can give you and I have heard the story a lot of times from Ian and Dara Lynch. But weirdly, kind of exactly the same thing happened. So I'm not going to say what they were getting the audience to chant, but they were getting them to chant some anti-bouncer sentiment, some very strong anti-bouncer sentiment. And the bouncers just kicked them out basically. And then I think they were drinking outside in the laneway or something. Anyway, it was a kind of a big, well, it wasn't a big mess. They just made out like it was a big mess. They wrote this article and, making them sound like, well, they were a bit mad back then. No, I have to say they were fairly mad back then. They were probably being really,
channeling their punk roots.
They were being very punk for sure. Yeah. But the bouncers definitely took it very, very personally.
I did the podcast with TPM a few weeks ago, lads, and Charles put it very nicely that many people in the bouncer line of work go well above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to doing security at gigs and stuff like that, and maybe they bring it on themselves. Would that be maybe something that could be possibly true? I believe that to be true. I'm sure there's some very nice, gentle people who go into being bouncers, just for bad eggs.
But there is definitely some bad eggs. I've had some dealings with them myself. I'm always shocked at bouncers who want to give out to, because I'm quite a small woman, and I've had huge bouncers just be really nasty to me, and I'm just while they call me love and pet, in the same breath. And I've a lot of memories of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it must be a crap job. That must be a crap. Remember we were talking about job satisfaction earlier? That must be shit. Being a bouncer, going home and being I did a really good job of kicking that lad out tonight. I really ruined his night. So.
The last time I got kicked out of somewhere, it's not the last time. One of the times that I got kicked out of somewhere that I can remember, the girl that I was with at the time was in the bathroom, and she came out of the bathroom and Bob Marley was on. She loves Bob Marley. She's a maniac Bob Marley fan, and she was like, I love Bob Marley. Let's go to dance for it. And then we got kicked out.
For loving Bob Marley.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I thought that was a little bit harsh, but
that's bizarre because everyone loves Bob Marley.
Who doesn't love Bob Marley?
He's hardly divisive. You know what I mean?
If people who don't love Bob Marley should get kicked out,
weirdos. Sure, there's none of them. They don't exist.
Here, I wanted to ask you about the massive instrument that you have. It's like a concertina in a magnifying glass. It's stretching my arms out really wide.
I don't think I have an instrument
not that
big.
No,
is it
not
this
big? But you have to play it with your feet as well, your legs and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a harmonium.
In my head.
Yeah, it's huge. No, massive. I'll tell you what's happening there. I'm really small. So when you see me on stage playing it, it seems like it's really big. But it's not that big. I actually think that's what's happening. It's about 2 feet long.
But it's
I think.
deep.
And then maybe a foot deep. Yeah. and then maybe a foot wide.
You play it like with your hands and your legs at the same time. Is that true? Or was
Oh
that my
wait,
imagination?
okay, no, okay. I think you're thinking of two different things. So look in the corner there. Is that what you mean? Two of them. There's two.
That's on the ground.
Yeah.
You play those on the ground.
Yeah.
This thing was like you kind of like play it like this.
Oh, I know what you mean. Okay, no, I know the thing. I know the
People
thing.
on the podcast aren't going to know what that was, but
Yeah.
I was basically playing the concertina with my knees and my hands at the same time.
Yeah.
Big.
It was very funny looking.
You know what I mean now?
Yeah, I do know what you mean now. So that's this massive accordion that I bought
It is massive.
years ago. Yeah,
I was
so
right.
it is. No, sorry, you are right about that. It is huge and it is so heavy and it's like about 100 years old and it's falling apart. Literally, I had it held together with duct tape for years. Recently, me and my dad kind of fixed it up better than it was, but it's still fairly wrecked looking. But I got that around the corner. From where we are now in Phibsborough, I'm trying to think, like something like 6 years ago, in this really weird second-hand shop that since has become a little bit more upmarket, and it's now called the Vintage Shop. But at the time, it sold really weird stuff, just all like these kind of weird old statues and some kind of like badges with swastikas on them and stuff, and like weird like kind of taxidermy. And like then these like it sold all these like wooden spinning wheels for a while, which is very spooky. But I went in one day and they had this accordion for like 20 quid, and I had no idea what like I tried to play it but it was kind of broken. I was like, I think that sounds kind of cool, and brought it home. And Dara Lynch from the band managed to figure out the kind of the mechanism in the middle on the inside and fixed it so that it could play. And then as soon as I played it, I was like, Jesus, I love that, because it's got this really off-kilter kind of rumbly, dirty bass sound on it that I've never heard on anything else, you know. And it's actually it's a kind of a bit of a be one of the kind of Lankum sounds, I suppose, that you hear on our albums and live and stuff is this instrument. And anything that sounds really like kind of dirty bass is this. But I'm really worried it's just going to die one day, because it's really it's in bits and I bring it all over the place and it is really falling apart. So someday it may just clap out and
What's
I'll be
it
really
called?
sad. It's called a bayan. It's like it seems to be like kind of Eastern European in general accordion. So like Ukraine, saw someone playing it there in Latvia, Russia definitely, you know, that kind of area. So it's different. It's different to a piano accordion. It's kind of like a really massive button accordion.
Is that Dan?
I think someone's just come in the door. No, it might not be Dan.
I wanted to ask you about Pullin the Devil by the Tail.
Oh yeah.
Which
Oh yeah.
what's the crack? Come over.
I think we can edit it. I made you dinner.
How's it going?
This is.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, you want to be on the podcast?
Oh yeah, yeah.
No.
You want to have a chat? Can I have a chat in the podcast?
No, all right.
No. I made dinner, by the way. It'll be ready whenever we're done here.
Dead on.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
5 minutes good.
Yeah, cool.
I think maybe we should leave that piece in. It's okay.
Just leave it in. that was Keen Lawless.
Kane.
Yeah.
Kane actually hooked me up to go to Berlin to meet people from
Oh,
the
brilliant.
strength shop
Yeah.
who are also hooking us up for the equipment for the Palestine Community Gym. So I went over
Oh,
there and
amazing.
met them, and they were legends.
Yeah, he's a good lad. He also co-wrote the song "Cold All Fire" with Ian and Dara.
No way.
He's that line "Dublin's Heart Still Beating." He wrote that.
I'm definitely going to leave it in now.
Yeah.
Definitely leave it in.
That's the man.
So
the
Pullin the
myth,
Devil by the Tail
legend.
is a 6-part animation that deserves to be mentioned on the podcast every
It
week.
does. Yeah.
That
Have you talked about it before?
Yeah, I mean, I played
Yeah.
a little clip of Pullin the
Oh,
Devil by the Tail on it.
amazing.
Maybe I'll put another clip in
Yes, please do.
like for you in this
Yeah.
episode.
Great. Okay.
Say in
Thanks.
honor to you
Yeah.
you being on the podcast. I'll put a little clip of Pullin the Devil by the Tail on. But like, how did you come across that? Because it was actually weird. I guess it's kind of a weird connection because we met in December when you guys were in Madden's, and then somewhere along the line, your group and our group realized that we had this mutual love of Pullin the Devil by the Tail, which
I'll
is weird.
tell you what happened. It was that your brother and Limo were they had to stay in Dublin, so they stayed in our house here. And then the next morning I came to the kitchen and they were just quoting Pulling the Devil by the Tail, and I was like, are you quoting Pulling the Devil by the Tail? And they're like, yeah, do you know that? And I was like, yeah, oh my God. And we just talked about it for 5 minutes, quoting it basically. They're way better at doing the accents though, because these are from Belfast.
But there's a comment on one of the Pulling the Devil by the Tail episodes from the Lankum YouTube account.
Oh yeah.
And that's when I realised that you were into it. I was like, whoa, what? That's weird.
The guy, Stephen McCallum, who did all the voices and animation, he actually did we loved it so much that we were like, when we were like doing a music video for one of our songs, The Granite Gaze, we all like unanimously wanted Stephen to do it. So we approached him and he didn't know us at all, and we were like, hey, we're like huge fans of your work. Will you, like, is there any chance you'd do a music video? And he said, yeah. So the video for The Granite Gaze is suitably disturbing, thank you, Stephen, and is like, it's claymation, like Pulling the Devil by the Tail. And he made like little claymation figures of us, and they still exist. They were in an exhibition somewhere. Yeah, and actually
there's a clay Radie Peat out there somewhere.
There is, and you know what's actually, I'll just tell you the full circle of this, which is gas. Because it all started with us being really obsessed with Pulling the Devil by the Tail, and then asking Stephen to do it or whatever, and then suddenly there was claymation versions of us, right? And then we ended up getting an award in the BBC for that track. And that year, what they did with the awards was they did these cast iron representations of, like, some of them, like, let's say if it was best group or whatever, they'd be like these little figurines with the same instruments as the people in the band. So they personalised every award to like fit the winner. And you're not going to believe this, the one for The Granite Gaze is the claymation version of us that Stephen made.
No way.
It exists like now in like an iron format as well.
They copied the claymation.
They copied it from
the iron version of it.
They made.
Whoa.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's really creepy looking.
Stephen McCallum is listening to this.
Yeah, there you go, Stephen.
And maybe we can do a podcast together.
Oh yeah, get him on. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely listen to that. Oh, he's so crack. He's brilliant. Yeah.
We love you. I also, just as a side note, whenever I was doing the research for the podcast here, that you are a Sopranos fan.
Oh yeah,
I'm a massive.
How do you know that?
Fan. I just did deep research.
Yeah, I think it's on the internet somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the internet. It was in an interview that you and I think maybe Ian did.
Oh, about what you watch
or something like, it was like a question kind of interview, and that was in there.
Oh yeah, totally obsessed with The Sopranos.
I've watched The Sopranos 3 times, like from start to finish, the whole way through.
Yeah, that's a big commitment as well.
It's mostly whenever I started going out with someone and they haven't seen it.
You have to show them,
we just finish the relationship, or
or they have to
watch The Sopranos.
Yeah, no, I love it. I have to say as well, one of my main like kind of guilty pleasure style inspirations is Adriana. Like, I actually just want to dress like Adriana. Like, it's all the crazy like leather snakeskin and the really tacky hoop earrings, and I'm just like, yeah.
But the episode when Adriana got killed though.
Oh, don't spoiler.
Sorry, he's like beep.
Don't tell them.
I mean, everyone's seen The Sopranos this stage.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. About
also,
Sopranos.
whenever I was we'll do another podcast on The Sopranos.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But you had a recent enough article actually in the paper, and one of the quotes was actually in the headline of the paper, is that the embarrassment that Irish people had about their music is gone.
It's gone, yeah. I remember that.
Seems like a deep thing to say, and I wanted to ask you about it, even though I said like we only have a couple of minutes left, but maybe that you can maybe expand on it a little bit, because
so oh god, and now we're under time pressure as well. So basically what I mean is, I think that what I talked about a little bit and where that quote came from was that when I was growing up playing traditional music, it was not something that other people, like, you either did it and you loved it and you knew why it was great, or you absolutely just didn't care and had complete disregard for it. Like, there wasn't this thing of people going in and like listening to trad. They didn't even call it trad, they called it diddly eye, and it was very disparaging. And it was the kind of thing where you'd be chatting away to someone, and then if it came up in conversation that you played diddly eye, they'd suddenly look at you like you were the most uncool person they'd ever met in their life. Whereas within the trad community, it was actually like, we all knew it was real good, and we were like, we're having a great time doing this, like, I don't care what other people think of it or whatever. And then it's been funny to watch how in my kind of 20s, then I watched it change from that to being something that's actually like people go and listen to it now just for pleasure, you know, and they refer to it as trad, and they seem to be less embarrassed by it. And I wonder, is it a kind of a general thing that's happening? Because I've also noticed a lot more people are singing in their own accents, which is amazing. Like the likes of like Kneecap, obviously, or even like Pillow Queens,
Kojak,
or or Junior Brother, or like there's loads of examples now. People, Lisa O'Neill singing in their own accents,
Sand
and
as well.
I
Who was on the
love that.
podcast.
Yeah. But I think that is like that's really the step in the right direction towards being honest and being like not embarrassed of being Irish, and not embarrassed of like where you're from.
Is it possible that that's connected to the period of time when everybody lost their run of themselves during the Celtic Tiger?
Possibly, and decided they were European and drank like cocktails. Yeah, I think so, but I actually think that it goes much further back. I think it's probably a post-colonial thing that we're just like trained to be embarrassed of ourselves, basically. So we're embarrassed of our accents, we're embarrassed of our language, we're embarrassed of ourselves, basically, because we were just told for too long that it was not good enough or not like worthy, or you know, I think we just still have that kind of mentality. I think it's changing now, though. I think there's a real kind of like a new thing. There's a new thing happening in Ireland, and I can't even tell you what it is. Like maybe 10 years down the road I'll be able to look back and tell you what I think was happening, but I think there's something good happening.
Like, you look at the last couple of referendums that we had for marriage equality, repeal,
amazing. Yeah,
like the Irish language is definitely growing. Trad is coming up in a big way, and that like young people are taking it to an international stage as well. People are kind of reclaiming it, I guess.
I hope, and I really hope that it's not us imagining that. I want that to be true, because I want that to be what's happening. I want it to be that people are like really being like, no, do you know what, like here we are,
this is who we are,
you know.
You guys have a new album coming out?
We do, yeah. So we're actually mixing it at the moment. I actually was meant to be down the studio today, and I told the lads I couldn't go because I was doing this. Yeah, so sorry, lads. But yeah, so we're just at the end of mixing it now. Going to be sending it off to master, and it's coming out in rough trade as well. And I think it's going to be out in October. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really, really excited to bring it out.
Where can people see you guys this year?
In Ireland, like
anywhere.
Oh, loads of places,
Ireland,
all over the shop. In Ireland, we it's not. Nothing is announced yet, but we will be doing some release gigs, obviously,
where
in
can
October.
People find out?
Our website, lankumdublin.com, I think. Yeah, it is lankumdublin.com. And that always has all our gig listings. So for the next while, we're not in Ireland for the next while, but yeah.
Twitter as well.
October.
You guys are like fond of putting the other controversial tweet out.
Oh Jesus, yeah. Well, that's Dara. He loves a bit of controversy. Yeah, I know. He's very good at the internet, you know. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Let's wrap
now
it
we
up.
eat our dinner.
Let's get dinner. You.
Yeah.
What did you think about that? The Harja Gael got a Cad Mila Moiget to Radie for taking the time out of her day to record that episode. She was otherwise going to be in the studio making some music with the rest of the Lankum crew. So I'm very grateful that she was able to spend a bit of time having a chats with the Rebel Matters fam. And after the podcast, then we had a lovely big dinner in the house with Dan and Cian as well. So it was like a little family outing up in Dublin. Anyway, as I was saying, I am absolutely busted right now, so I'm going to go to bed and get a few winks before heading up to Body and Soul tomorrow. Just as usual, if you want to support the podcast on Patreon, then you can find the Rebel Matters podcast on the patreon.com website. That is a platform where you can sign up to support the podcast with a little monthly subscription if you want to. And you can also check out what's happening on all the social media accounts. We've got the Rebel Matters podcast account, we've got the Palestine Community Gym account, there's the Ackley Cork account. If you want to go and find out what we're doing from a personal training point of view in Cork City Centre, you can leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And that's it. So thanks a million for listening. Thanks for coming back and tuning into the podcast every week. Let me know what you think about the episode, where you're listening to it, and share it around with your mates. Agus Gaji and Chedarala, Kenny Fury, Big Jason Akela, Agus Slan.